The last train of the night groaned as it left the empty station, its wheels grinding against the rusted tracks. The air inside was thick with the scent of old metal and something else. Something faintly rotten. Ben slumped into his usual seat by the window, exhausted from another grueling shift at the hospital. Outside, the world passed by in a blur of cold, distant streetlights. The train was nearly empty, except for one other passenger. A woman sat 3 rows ahead, dressed in an old-fashioned black dress that clung to her thin frame. Her long, stringy hair hung over her face, hiding her features. She sat too still, too rigid. As the train dipped into a tunnel, the lights flickered. When they steadied, Ben's breath hitched in his throat. The woman was now sitting directly across from him. Ben's fingers clenched around his bag. He hadn't heard her move, hadn't seen her get up. And yet, here she was. "Didn't mean to startle you," she whispered, her voice dry as crumbling leaves. Ben forced a nervous chuckle. "You move pretty quietly." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes dark hollows beneath the dim lights. "You shouldn't be on this train." His stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer, her lips barely moving. "This train never reaches its last stop." Before he could react, the train lurched violently. The lights flickered again, longer this time. The cabin was swallowed in darkness. Then, a whisper, cold and breathy. "Get off. Now." When the lights came back on, the woman was gone. Ben's pulse hammered. He scanned the carriage. Empty. The doors at both ends were closed, yet she had vanished. He turned toward the window to steady himself. His breath froze in his throat. The outside world was wrong. The city was gone. The train was rushing through a twisted landscape of dead, gnarled trees that clawed at the fog-covered sky. The tracks stretched into an abyss, the rails rusted and broken. His reflection in the window, his own wide, terrified eyes, stared back at him. But behind him, a second face appeared. The woman. Her skin was peeling. Her mouth stretched unnaturally wide as if her jaw had been unhinged. A guttural, inhuman noise rasped from her throat. Ben spun around. Nothing. Then the train screeched. The windows shattered. A violent wind howled through the cabin. The overhead lights pulsed wildly, casting nightmarish shadows that moved on their own. A presence loomed behind him. A hand, ice-cold and rotting, pressed against his shoulder. He turned. The woman was there. Her mouth now a gaping hole, her eyes black voids seething with movement. She reached for him, her fingers elongating, twisting like roots from a corpse. Ben stumbled backward. He slammed his fist against the emergency stop button. Nothing happened. The train wasn't stopping. It would never stop. The woman loomed closer, her whisper crawling into his ears like writhing insects. "You're one of us now." The next morning, the train pulled into the station on schedule. The doors hissed open. The conductor stepped inside, glancing at the empty seats. No passengers, no signs of anyone ever being there, except for one abandoned jacket, and a single handprint on the frosted window. Long, thin fingers, dragging downward. Would you dare take the last train of the night?